that's not very good. Hello, everybody out there. Susan May here, doing the Facebook Live post, and I'm having trouble with my phone, I think, because when I see the picture of me, I look a bit foggy. So I need people to join in, and if possible, can you please tell me, do I look a little bit blurry? Because I might have to start again. I should have tested it. It's got a little button here, so maybe if I press that. No filter. Maybe I need a filter. Anybody there? No? Okay, well, I'll keep talking and hope that people join in and tell me if they can see me properly. What happens there? So what happens when I do that? Okay. So we were going to talk about some inspiration for writing and some background on some of the short stories. We've been doing a read-along of Behind Dark Doors, and a few people have been reading along, but I think everybody's busy with Christmas, and somebody's joined us. It says one person is there, so who's that? Say hello. And you have to tell me, do I look blurry, like I'm in a mist? Oh no, they've gone. Okay, so is Diane there? Because she was checking in with me. And Diane, you can tell me, because last week she told me how I could stop touching my hair, which I'm sure male authors don't have a problem with, but for some reason I did. Okay, so I was going to talk to you about some of the short stories and some of the history behind them. And I know a few people also wanted to tune in and learn a little bit about how to write a novel, because I know a lot of people start off and many people want to learn how to write or write a book. Everybody's got a dream about doing that, just like I did. And it's not easy to start with, but eventually you do learn how to do it, and it is a process, and some of it's attitude more than anything. Oh, I know who that is. Hi, Christina. Is that you? Can you message Christina and just, or not message, just maybe make a comment at the bottom of this and just let me know if it looks sort of blurry? I'm just wondering. Your internet's playing up. I'm worried that mine is. Anyway, maybe it's a good thing that I'm a little bit blurry. It's soft focus, actually. So it's my best lighting, darkness. So anyway, talking about writing, I think everybody thinks that there is a story inside them, and there is, I'm sure. But it's getting it down on paper that sometimes is the tricky thing. And, you know, you might see I've written a few books and lots of short stories. Hello, Diane. I see you've joined us. Oh, so Christina, it does look blurry. Okay. I don't know what's wrong. I should have tested it earlier. But anyway, sorry about that. So, hello, Stephanie. And hello, Carol. Yeah, I know, a little blurry. I know, it doesn't look clear. I don't know why. Maybe, can you get Harry's phone and just see? I might see if my son's phone is any better. Hi, Diane. Diane has been such a help. So she's the moderator now for the gang. So she's going to keep everybody organised and let people join when they say hello while I'm asleep, because of course I'm in Australia and a majority of the people who... Smoggy, I know, exactly. I think it might be... I don't actually know what it is. So anyway, moving along, nobody really cares. Hi, Carol, how are you? Down south. Had lots of rain today in Perth. Considering it's summer, it's a bit of a shock, and I know it rained down south where Carol lives. Hello, Kim. Where are you from, Kim? Anyway, I'll keep talking. So, you might think, okay, I've written quite a few books and they've done okay, and I've sold clean screen humidity, says Christina. Try wiping the camera quickly. Where's the camera?
At the back.
Okay, my husband's going to do that. He's the technical guy, so bear with us for one moment. This is the problem being live. This happens to me all the time. I do a radio segment. Okay, here you go. It's being wiped. How does that work when the camera's at the back? Is it? Don't know. It's weird. Oh, that is actually better, isn't it? It's humidity, I think. Isn't it? Okay. All right. Next time I will wipe the camera. That's definitely better. It's humidity. Okay. Next time I'll wipe the camera. Best move along. Ah ha ha. Lol. Okay. So, a bit better. Yes, because we wiped the camera. So that's good enough. I think it's better if it's not clear, right? Anyway. Talking about writing books, Diane says better as well. Hi, Pamela, joining us. Hello. Oh, Christina says open the window because it is hot in here. So that's probably it. Okay. Hello, Joyce. I don't know, Joyce. How are you? Thanks for joining in. Okay, moving along. So I'm Susan May and I'm talking about writing and my stories and some of the inspiration for them. Hi, Pamela. And I think I have to tell you the honest truth. So from the time I was very young, I always wanted to be a writer. I can remember when I was about 13, I was in grade 8 at school and telling the English teacher, because I did pretty well in English and I could spell really well because I loved reading and I loved writing. And I remember telling her I decided I wanted to be an air hostess. And she came running down the hall after me, looking a bit shocked, saying to me, "No, you can't do that. You said you were going to be a writer. You have to be a writer. I think that would be better than being an air hostess." So I thought, okay, then I'll be a writer. But as I've told you before in the last Facebook Live, it didn't turn out that way. I ended up in business and I ended up stopping writing, and I stopped when I was about 27 after telling everyone I was going to be a writer and after studying it for a while. And then I didn't take it up again until 6 years ago at the ripe old age of 50. I know I'm telling everyone my age, but I don't really care. Okay, I'll answer that in a minute, Christina. You got the notes, Secretary? My husband's taking the notes. Can you see?
It's loading for me still.
Oh, okay. It's not working for him at the moment. Anyway, I will get to that, Christina. So I stopped for all those years, even though I'd been saying since I was very young that I was going to write. So why did I do that? Now I look back, the honest to goodness truth was I was too scared to write because I had this idea in my head. If I was going to be a writer, I wanted to be the best writer there ever was. I wanted to be hugely successful, and I had a lot of potential. So when I was 8, I had a poem that I wrote at school that was chosen to be in a collection of poetry. I won an award when I was in grade 1 for an essay that I'd written, and I don't remember what I wrote, something about a holiday, but it was so good they gave me an award and a little book, and I got up in front of the whole school and got my award at presentation night. And along the way, I had all these indications that I could be quite a good writer. Even when I came to Perth and I studied writing for film and television, just for a bit of fun and to sort of, I guess, grow my knowledge of writing. And even the tutor there decided, I think as I told you, that, what I'd written as a concept for a film was good enough that I might be able to get a grant, and he offered to help me. So here was this person who had all this great potential to be a writer and maybe a successful writer, and then I just quit. I took this opportunity to get into business, and I told myself, yeah, I'm doing this because it's a good opportunity and I shouldn't miss it. Well, I look back now and I think the reason that I did that was I was too scared to fail. I actually preferred the idea of possibly being a good writer rather than finding out if I was a good writer. So I was prepared to live the rest of my life believing that I could have been a good writer, except that life got in the way and I took up all these other opportunities. Hi, Judy. Don't say hey bunkmate to me. I'll tell you about Judy one day. She's a nice person, but strange ideas. And Joyce has said, interesting, some people want to write but are afraid to do it. So glad you followed up on it. Thank you. Me too. So here's the moral to the story. Don't not do something because you're scared you'll fail, especially writing, because you might miss out on doing something that truly you are good at. Not to say that I'm great at what I do, but the thing is I enjoy it. And once I started writing again, I can't say I enjoyed the first year or two when I took up writing again. It's really tough to learn how to write. That's true, Diane. When you write, you are sharing a part of yourself. I think I'll address that one. I might make a note. You make a note of that, and I'll answer that in a minute, what I think about that. But yeah, look, the thing is, when it comes to writing, and I'm quite sure this applies to most things in life, you have to fail to succeed. You actually have to do a really bad job, because from the failure, you learn how to be better at what you do. I think all athletes, don't win. I think Michael Phelps has lost many a race on his way to creating Olympic history. I think Stephen King has talked, and most authors talk about the fact that they believe a lot of the stuff they write is rubbish. Hi Claire, I don't know you, but thank you for joining. So I think I'm talking, Claire, since you've just joined us, and anyone else who's just joined us, I'm just talking about why you should never give up on doing something because you're scared you'll fail. Because I didn't write for 23 years, which I look back and think, oh my gosh, 23 years I could have been practicing, creating stories, entertaining people, entertaining myself. Where would I be? And I didn't do it because I was too scared. And I would really like people to, learn from what I stupidly did. And then I'll tell you what happened when I started writing. So in January 2000, I thought I'm going to, Judy, what does that say? Seriously great and wonderful advice. Okay, great. So when I started writing in 2000, I think I might have mentioned, I started writing a page a day. I set myself that goal. My hair's in my mouth, sorry. I started with that goal, and I did that. I wrote a page a day, and it was really tough. A page is approximately 250 words, and that isn't a lot. I can write 250 words now in about 10 minutes. If I put my mind to it, quicker if I'm at a good bit. And but when you first start, it's really hard. Your mind is not trained to do whatever magical thing it does with imagination. I don't know how it works, honestly. Most writers don't. It's some weird magical thing that happens when you've written for a while, or maybe you're lucky and you haven't written for a while and you can just do it. And somehow this imaginary world happens and you just jot it all down and it comes alive. So I started doing this very inexperienced, despite studying writing for a year, just part-time, and practicing here and there and reading lots of books on how to write. I started to wrote a page a day, and I kept doing that for 3 months. And at the end of it, I had about 100 pages, because I didn't write more than a page a day. Sometimes I'd write 2, but it was really tough. My brain hurt. And then after that, I realised that I could stop for a day or 2, but I still wanted to go back. So I'd built a habit. So there's the second tip. If you want to write, you have to build a habit. It doesn't come naturally to sit down and write. That thing they talk about where you bleed over your keyboard, that doesn't happen forever. Well, I hope it doesn't. But it happens gradually, that it becomes easier and easier. I don't feel like I bleed when I'm writing. You do get to tough bits where I'm walking around thinking, oh my gosh, I've got my characters in the wrong spot. I need to get them over here, or I need this one connected to this one, and I need them in the same place, and I can't. But I've learned how to get around that, which I can talk about another time. if people are interested what to do. I can tell you Troubles Keeper, if any of you have read The Troubles Keeper. And if you haven't, go and buy it. Seriously, apparently it's a good read. And you won't guess who the killer is until the very end. So I'm told. Anyway, what was I saying? Yes, in that book, oh my gosh, I had so much. Judy's asking, how do you get your ideas? I'll get back to it. The talent is there, but do you wake up at 3 a.m. with a blast of inspiration or pace about thinking about stuff? Okay, I'll get to that and make a note. Anyway, yeah, in Troubles Keeper, seriously, that book had quite a bit of rewrites in the middle of it because characters were not where they were meant to be. The killer, if you've read, was not the original killer. It was somebody else totally, haha. So I had to change the killer, I had to change what people were doing because I got stuck in a hole. But you learn how to deal with that as well. People call it writer's block. I don't think it's writer's block. I don't think there's such a thing. I think you just haven't worked it all out and you just have to keep writing until it comes to you. So anyway, getting back to 2000, I started writing a page a day, which I recommend to everyone, even if it's half a page. But you have to do it every single day to begin with. Oh, thank you, Diane. Amazing book. Thank you. There you go. Diane recommends it. So, look, even if you just write anything, like you can write a short story. I started off writing a novel, which I've never published. It was called Deja Vu, which is it was a really interesting concept. And I actually wrote about 600 pages of it. And then I stopped because it was beyond my ability at the time to finish it. So anyway, after writing a page a day for about 6 months, and I stopped for a day or two here and there when I got busy, but I'd already built a habit, so I didn't stop. Diane says she's going to use small pages. Do you know what? That's actually a good idea. Whatever works. If you're typing, even double space the lines, because it isn't about how many words you write. It's about the fact that you turn up every single day. Now, this is exactly the same theory for exercising. Susan, please listen to what you're saying, because I've got out of the habit of exercising. I used to swim every second day, a few kilometres, and I've stopped doing it because writing's got in the way. But to build a habit, you have to turn up every day. It isn't about how much you do. It's about turning up and creating a habit. I've never written a term paper. Okay. Fine, Judy. I'll go along with that. Yeah, you've really just got to build a habit. So I built this habit for about 6 months and I thought I was going along really well, and I'd rush over to my husband after I'd written and he'd come home from work and I'd say, guess what? I've got a really good chapter here, or I've got a really good couple of pages, read it. And then one day I wrote something, just a couple of pages, and I read back what I'd written and I thought it was terrible. So what did I do? Did I think, oh, well, I can fix that up or I can edit it later? I was really inexperienced. So I looked at what I'd written and I thought, this is the biggest piece of rubbish that I have ever read. I think in America you call it trash, or you can swear, but I don't swear. Are you arguing, you two? Judy and Diane are arguing about term papers. Yeah, so what did I do? I didn't give myself a talking to. I just didn't turn up the next day. I decided that what I'd written was so bad, I would never be a writer. I had no talent, and I was embarrassed and ashamed, and I couldn't face how awful what I'd written was. So I never went back to the writing for 2 weeks. I put it away and cried and told my husband, and cried at night, didn't I, hon? Yep. And he had to keep saying to me, no, you can do it. And I kept saying, no, I can't. So Christina is saying, editing is my problem, so hard going over and over again. Okay, I've got an answer for that too. So anyway, to cut a long story short, 2 weeks later, I was drawn back, as you are, because I'd built a habit. So I really did want to go back to writing, and I kind of took a deep breath, quite a few deep breaths, and went back and read what I'd written that I thought was so bad that I had no right to even think that I was a writer. And as it turns out, it wasn't that bad. So I realised a big thing then, that you can't look at something that you've written as a draft, especially when you're learning, and judge whether or not it's any good. Because what people don't realise when you are writing, reading a book that's polished, it's probably had, by the author, anything up to 10, maybe more edits. In the case of my writing, I do a first draft, which is just throw it on the page, and then I don't look back as I'm writing, going along. I rarely go back and check my spelling or anything like that. And then I go back and edit and edit and edit. Not a lot, maybe 3 or 4 times, and then I send it to an editor. And then lately, in the last book, I send it out to a lot of you guys, and you come back and say you've misspelt that, or you've made a mistake here, or this character is not in the right place in the room. And so I try really hard not to judge what I'm writing until I've got to like the second draft of something, and then I make a decision. And even then, sometimes it's the third draft, and even then, sometimes it's when it comes back from the editor. So my recommendation to somebody who is struggling to get going is that, first of all, just recapping, you have to start. And there is no good time. Everyone that asks me about writing, I give them the same advice, and they always say to me, I think always, I'm going to get to that, and in a couple of weeks, when the kids are on holidays, or the kids go back to school, or my mother-in-law is better, or I'm feeling better, I've got a cold. It's just like New Year resolutions. People who make New Year's resolutions don't tend to keep them, because they're waiting to make that resolution and they don't really want to make that decision. However, if you make a decision that tomorrow, doesn't matter what the date is, doesn't matter what the day is, I am going to do a certain thing, you usually, or I guess I haven't got the statistics on it, but I think you probably would end up doing it, because you've made a decision to change something. Yes, that's true, Christina. Excuses. That's what everyone has. So when somebody starts telling me that they want to be a writer, they've got a great idea for a book, and I give them some advice, and then they start telling me all the reasons they can't do something, I know that probably when I see them next, if I ask them how they're going, they'll say to me, oh, what happened was this happened, that happened, blah, blah. So that's the difference between a book getting written and a book not getting written. It's actually starting. Then when you start, don't judge what you've written, because it is not going to compare to a polished book. And also, ideas evolve as you're writing. So none of my books are plotted. None of my short stories are plotted. I do not know the end when I start a story. Not one single short story. So we're all reading Behind Dark Doors, and I haven't actually, not one single one of those stories did I know the ending when I started. Sometimes, like we're reading I Hate Emma Carter at the moment, that story actually came from the phrase, I hate Emma, and what was the name of that girl? I won't tell you the name of the person, but I was quite angry with somebody. And so I was sitting there one day saying, I hate Emma, beep. And then I suddenly thought, oh, I love the phrase. It just, I don't know, had a ring to it. So I thought, okay, what if I come up with a surname that has the same amount of syllables as this person's name? What a great title for a story. So that story was inspired by me saying, I hate Emma, beep. And so I came up with I Hate Emma Carter. I had no idea that I Hate Emma Carter was going to be about some girls in a class and bullying and cyberbullying, and that would become, in fact, I won't tell you what I Hate Emma Carter refers to, but I had no idea it was that. So your inspiration can come from anywhere. Now, I'm going to answer questions. So if you've just joined us, Susan May here, talking about writing and setting habits to write if you want to write, or, you know, what an author does to keep going. I don't have to really worry a lot. I've been at this now for 6 years. The first couple of years was a bit rough, so you have to stick at it. They say it takes 90 days to build a habit. So with writing, sometimes maybe it could be more. But if you keep going, absolutely, trust me, you will become a writer. There's no two ways about it. Whatever you want to write, poetry or short stories or a novel, there's only one way to get to the end of a novel. It is start, write something, write a sentence, write a paragraph, write a page. Turn over, write the next page. Keep going until book is ended. Simple. There is no secrets. You can go and get a university degree. You can go and you can read a bunch of books. You can read every blog post ever written about how to write. Writing comes from practice. The more you write, the better you get. The more your imagination opens up, the more you see ideas everywhere. Oh, I didn't tell you. When I stopped work or left my businesses, I was 40. And until I started writing 10 years later, I had one idea for a book in my head. And that was the one that I started writing, which I wrote 600 pages and have never published. That was the only idea that ever came to me, because I wasn't practicing and using my imagination. But now, because I write all the time, I have a million ideas. And that's what you'll find. Once you start writing, something happens in your head. I don't know what. But everything you see, every day, I could come up with a different story idea. It's just I don't have time to write them all. It drives me nuts. Okay, so somebody asked... Oh, tools. What tools do I use? I don't use Grammarly, which is a... Christina, that's the one that corrects your grammar, right? Isn't it? So I don't use that because I have an editor, and I have tried Grammarly, but it's actually isn't perfect, and it gives you a bit of misdirection. Also, there seems to be a new style in punctuation, and I suggest don't worry so much about punctuation, especially the first few drafts. That's what you hire an editor for. I hire an editor. I have an American editor, even though I'm an Australian. It's because I write to the American market, because that is the biggest market, English-speaking market in the world, as far as I know. Unless I can find a way to sell in India, because they have more English-speaking people there, but I can't work out how to sell in India. Anyway, so I have an American editor, and she corrects a lot of my Australianism, and I've kind of learned to think a bit in American. We have a different way of phrasing things. Like Americans say things like, we would say we go out the back, whereas you guys say... when you're talking about going into your backyard, you say out back. So little weird things like that. And we say towards, he runs towards me, whereas Americans say toward. So there's a lot of things, plus the spelling's different. So if you read my books, and you might notice there's kind of some weird phrasing. Some people have noticed there's an accent. I've tried to get rid of it, but it's hard. Anyway, so I don't use Grammarly, and that tells me, Christina, that you need to forget about correcting your grammar at the moment, because if you really want to write fiction, then you need to just write it. Don't worry about the grammar. You can sort that out later. And I've got a really lovely lady now, Jan, who lives in Florida, who is proofreading all my books. She's actually going back and proofreading Deadly Messengers, because I over comma. And but in Australia, I've noticed a lot of the books, probably UK and Australian English, we put commas in a lot of places, whereas the fashion now is to comma less and to comma only for people, so people can understand what you're writing, and not to put commas everywhere because technically it's correct. Better to just let it flow. So I'm learning that as well. Oh, okay, Christina's saying she likes Grammarly for her blog. Yeah, I mean, look, it's good, yeah. It's good to try and get your grammar right. But I'm not trained on grammar, so I leave that to other people. So what's that, Joyce? People afraid to what? You've written people afraid to... My husband's not been a very good secretary, I'm afraid.
Keep going.
So I've got to keep talking, but I was going to answer questions.
No, but you got more there.
What's that? Yeah, but what's that mean? People afraid to...
No, that was it, to write. That was a question.
Oh, that's not a question. And Judy, what's that mean? What was that one?
Ideas. How can all the ideas be?
Oh, the ideas. I think I answered that, Judy, about ideas, right? Judy gave me an idea. So Judy Clay lives in New York, and she wrote to me, maybe, was it a year ago, Judy? Wrote to me about my book, my stories. I think she'd read Behind Dark Doors and she really liked the stories. Thank you, Judy. And anointed herself a big fan. And then she offered me a bunk in her basement, which is a bit creepy and a bit Stephen King misery. And then explained to me that she keeps people that she really loves down there. One being Jennifer Lawrence, and lately apparently George Clooney's down there. But I explained to Judy that I'm cool. I don't actually, fancy going into her basement, because not because I've got anything against basements, but because I actually would prefer not to be stuck in a room with Jennifer Lawrence. She seems like a lovely girl. But as I keep saying to Judy, she's always on about this damn Oscar and how she fell over going up the stairs and blah, blah, blah. We've all fallen over collecting awards, Jennifer. So, yeah. So anyway, that's my reason. But the funny thing was, I thought, what a great idea. Someone who keeps famous people in their basement. So I told Judy, I'm going to write that story one day, which I am going to. So that's where I get some of my ideas. Like, you can just say the dumbest thing to me and then I'll go, good idea. And then I'll run to my husband and say, I've got a great idea for a story. And I'll tell him and he'll look at me like, that's a weird idea. But then I'll write it and then he gets it. So I suggest sometimes if you've got a good idea for a story, don't tell anyone because unless you really trust them, because people can't see your vision or your skill to create it. Leave Jen alone, Christina says. I love Jennifer Lawrence. I'm just joking. And George Clooney, I didn't want to be in a basement with him either. He's always on about coffee and, drink this coffee. It's good coffee. Judy Clay says, wow, I'm glad I don't know Judy. She's weird. So what was the other thing I was going to talk about? Oh, Tracy says, do you write in Word? Okay, yes. I do write in Word. I've tried, what's that other one that I've tried? Scrivener. I did try Scrivener, but I don't like Scrivener. See, here's the other thing, Tracy, that I worked out how to write a novel. So, wind back, I had written a lot of short stories up until 3 years ago, and I'd finished a couple of novels, 2 novels, but I hadn't edited them. I think I was up to the 3rd edit on a particular novel, which I still haven't released. I probably will go back and check on it and release it this year. Do you love Scrivener, Tracy? I know. How do I manage all the pages in Word? Okay. First of all, just what was I talking about? Forget it. I can't remember where I was. How do I manage all the pages? Okay. Depends how you write, Tracy. I write linear. I don't need to move things around very much. I actually don't, even though my editor is a content editor, so that means a content editor is someone that looks at your work and they say, okay, this shouldn't be here. This should be here later. This character isn't developed enough. They can go through and check the spelling and the grammar and stuff, but they're more to look at the content and the editorial part of your work and give you advice on it. So, for instance, I'm just trying to think, like in Back Again, I vividly remember my editor telling me that there was a bit where Dawn had was remembering when her sister had died, and she told me, look, build this bit up a bit more so that there's a lot more tension before you end this chapter. So it's sort of a bit of rewriting, not a lot. So anyway, for some reason, I'm really lucky. I don't need to do a lot of rewriting. So by the time I send it to an editor, or by the time I finish the first draft, there isn't a lot of moving around to do. So Scrivener is a program that I believe, not using it extensively, that you've got to, it's really handy if you want to move chapters around and you want to look at, oh, okay, I've had this character in this many chapters, or, you know, this is a dramatic chapter, this is a exposition chapter to tell people a little bit of backstory or whatever. Structural editor, Carol. I couldn't think of the word. So structural editor is a content editor as well. So I don't really need that. And there's a lot of stuff that I think you read about, like technical stuff about writing. I don't agree with it. You know, they tell you that you need to have beats in a book. So a bit like they say beats is a film term. So in a movie, the technical thing is it's a 3-act play, basically. You've got a middle, a beginning, and there's a bit of retrospective, you notice, about 3/4 of the way through, where a character kind of goes over what's happened, learns something and moves forward, and then boom, boom, it's ended. A book is supposed to kind of go along that way, and they teach you all this stuff if you read about it, that you've got to have this there, and you've got to have this there, and you've got to have a person there, and it's a lot of complicated stuff. So if you read all this stuff, you think to yourself, wow, I can't keep track of all the stuff I'm meant to do. So it's just me, but I don't actually believe in all that. I just started writing. I start writing a story, I write a chapter, and then at the end of the chapter I think, okay, it ends like this, so therefore the next chapter has to be about this. And then when I finish that one, the next chapter has to be about the next thing. I don't really plot it all out, but I'm not a plotter. There's a lot of people who lay everything out and then they stick to it because they feel if they don't do that, they will write a lot of extra stuff. I do write a lot of extra... No, I don't write a lot of extra stuff. I do write extra stuff that has to be cut, but there's not a lot of it because I kind of know as I'm going along, this bit's a bit boring, I need to move it along, and then I get rid of it, or I don't even write it. But that's just the way that I write. So the other thing you need to know about writing is that it's not the same for everybody. Everybody has their own style and the way that they like to do things. So if you want to write, you have to develop your own style and become comfortable with that. You can't copy what anybody else does. But there is one book that I do recommend, and it's this one. And you know what? I realise when I hold these books up that they're reversed. So this book here is, it's reversed, but it's Stephen King on writing, and it's probably the best book, maybe the only book you need to read on writing, because it just basically tells you what I just told you, that you need to write. Somewhere in there he's got the formula. So as Diane says, most people don't have common sense, so they need a guide. Okay, yeah, maybe. But what happens is the more you write, the better you get. Oh, okay, you've got Stephen King on writing, Tracy. Yeah, it's a good book. I read it every now and then because it just reminds me of stuff that I need to do. But the other thing that I did do when it came time to write a novel, because I'd written lots of short stories, but I couldn't just, sit down and do what I needed to do. Things got in the way. I set myself a goal of writing Back Again, the book from Back Again, the short story. And I didn't think I could do it, when my editor suggested to me, after she'd edited back again the short story, which is about maybe 45 pages, she wrote to me and she said, you know what, I think this could be a really good book. Why don't you turn it into a book, and I'll send it off to a friend of mine in LA, and this is my American editor, who's an agent, and I think she'd be interested. So I thought, wow, I'm not going to give that opportunity up. And this is a few years ago, before being an independent author. Publisher was a thing. So at the time, I thought I really wanted to get a publishing deal. I don't now, but I did then. So I wasn't sure if I could turn this short story into a book. I thought, I'm only going to give myself 28 days to do it, and I think I talked about this last time. So what I did was I worked out how many words I needed to write every day, and a bit like NaNoWriMo, which happens in November, which is National Novel Writing Month, and you've got 30 days to write 50,000 words, and it seems a lot, but it's not that hard. It's about 1,600 and something words a day. And surprisingly, you can get that done. So that's what I did. I set myself 28 days to turn this short story into a novel, and I recorded it on a spreadsheet. So I had a little formula worked out, and I've got the spreadsheet somewhere, which I'll find the link and put it at the bottom of this. And you can grab it for yourself if you like, but there's programs now that do it. So you just put in when you want to finish the book by, how many days it is, and it'll tell you how you're tracking. So if there was a day where I wrote more, well, then I was ahead. And then if there was a day where I didn't write as much, well, I had to catch up. And after 28 days, I turned this short story into a novel. And it almost felt like I leaned back and went, oh, my goodness, I did it. And I actually didn't expect that I could do it. So I sent that off, I edited it, and I used the same process. So I said to myself, okay, I want to edit this book in 28 days, so I have to do by then I think it was about 70,000 words, so I had to do a couple of thousand a day of editing. Now the second draft takes me longer than the first draft. It always does, because there's a lot of work involved in, making the story work. When you're just throwing it on the page, that's kind of easy. When you have to actually get down to the nuts and bolts, that's a lot harder. So that takes me longer to do a second draft. And then I go back and do a third draft, which is a bit quicker. And then when the book comes back from the editor after, say, the third draft, that is quicker again. And then the very final draft, where I'm just polishing little bits and looking for spelling mistakes and, sentences that are a bit yuck, that doesn't take very long. Like for a 90,000 word novel, which is about 400 pages, that probably only takes about 10 days. Some people do it really quickly, like I'm talking 2 days. I don't know how they do it, honestly, because I look at each line and check. Anyway, that's basically how you do it. You just have to turn up, do something every day, and hang on, I'm reading what people are writing. I saw his name 3 times in front of a mirror. Whose name? Stephen King. Oh, okay. You're so funny, Judy. And Diane, your husband read what? Back again? Oh, what book? Oh, on writing. Which book?
Yeah, I'm assuming
Stephen
Stephen King.
King. Okay, he read Stephen King. Yeah, it's a good book. It's just an interesting book, actually, the Stephen King book. It talks about his, how he got into writing, and it's the same kind of stuff. That guy is a good writer because he wrote a lot of short stories. Like all these great writers, of yesteryear, they cut their teeth writing short stories. And on writing, I really recommend that because, short stories, like I've said before, it gives you the opportunity to finish something that you can share. And going back to earlier, Christina talked about editing all the time. You do tend to do that, Christina, but the more you write, the less you have to edit. Basically, what you put down in the first draft isn't as crappy, isn't as horrible as it is when you first, embark on this journey. And it is a bit of a journey, and I'm still learning as I go and getting better. like the book I'm writing at the moment, bestseller, I'm halfway through, and I stopped a couple of months ago when The Troubles Keeper came out, and I had to kind of launch it and deal with edits, and at the moment it's the Audible is being produced. My narrator is halfway through. He's so good. He's excellent. He's an actor in LA, and he's just got Rory Fine and all the voices down pat. It's incredible. I love listening to the to it. I'm listening to it, just listening for any mistakes to correct. Anyway, you get better as you go, and there's not as much editing. It doesn't look as messy. It looks more like like my first drafts now look more like my second or third drafts in the early days, and so I don't look at them so much and think, oh, yuck. I kind of look at them and think, oh, not bad. So the book I'm writing at the moment, bestseller, is pretty. I actually really like it. And I have occasionally, when I've started the next day's writing, I don't even tend to read what I've written the day before. A lot of authors do, but I kind of just want to keep pushing on and get it down on the page. I remember reading somewhere that an author said, don't get it right, get it down. And I agree with that. Just like get the story down. You're literally writing maybe a 60 to 70,000 word outline. That's how I feel. I've just written it all down, got the story worked out mostly, and then I can go back and edit it. I quite like it. The third edit. Second edits are killers, but third edits are nice. There's not a lot of work to do there. At least every day I'm not walking around terrified that I don't know what I'm going to be doing. That's the other thing too. Probably one of the last things I'll leave you with, because I've been talking for a long time. Don't worry that you won't be able to finish your book, because you can always work it out. If you're determined, you'll work out how to solve your plot problems. And I'll share with you on Troubles Keeper, which was the trickiest book to write. Like, it was easy, and then there were bits in it that I was a bit bamboozled. I always walk around worrying that I won't know what's going to happen next. It's not that it stops me, but I kind of get up in the mornings when I'm doing a first draft, if I don't know what I'm going on with, and I think, oh God, what am I going to do today? And I sit in front of the computer and I start writing and thinking, okay, I know what the next sentence is, but I'm not sure what happens next. And then, I don't know, something happens and suddenly action is happening, and I'm rarely sitting there staring at a blank page. But get it down, not get it right. That's correct. New mantra, yes, excellent. That's the truth. But you know what? All authors, this happens to you. Hello, Sam MC Mac, wherever you're from. Thank you for joining us. I'm almost finished, but you can always listen to what I've been talking about. So, for instance, in Troubles Keeper, I got to a part in the book, in my first draft, where I thought, I don't know where to go next, because I had one character. I had Mariana, if you've read the book, in one spot, and I had Rory in another spot, and I needed them to be together. And I thought, how am I going to get these guys back together? And I thought about it for a while, and I walked around for a couple of days thinking, I don't know what I'm doing here. And I started to get worried. And then I thought to myself, you know what? I'm just going to jump to where I need them to be, or I think they both need to be, and write from there. So that's what I did. I just jumped ahead. So by the time I finished the book, in my head, I had this big part when I got to the second draft. When I got to this part in the second draft that I would have to fix. And it was really bothering me. So in my head, I allowed that I probably had an extra 5,000 words to fix this bit of my book where I thought I was stuck. So I'm writing along, editing on the second draft. And I get to the bit that I thought was going to be a huge issue. And it was so ridiculous, because what had happened in the book, Rory had said to Mariana in the first draft, come with me to this place where they were going to go, and ultimately the book was going to take off and they would end up facing the killer. And she'd said, no, I'm staying here. So here I was thinking I had to do this big change and write extra bits, 5,000 words I had in my head, and all I had to do was have her say, yes, I'll come with you. So it's the simplest thing, that you get yourself all worked up because you're in this mode of, oh, okay, I've got to do this. And the best thing is, if you get stuck, just write ahead or write around it, but never stop. Don't ever stop, because your mind, writing is a mind game. And if you allow your mind to win, you'll stop writing. And if you allow your mind to convince you that you are too busy to start writing, you'll never start writing. And I often say that the biggest challenge is dealing with your mind. And it's the other reason that I'm a pretty happy-go-lucky person. I try not to get angry or let stew on things for too long, because I need my mind to write, and I can't have it off being annoyed with people or frustrated. I mean, I still get frustrated with normal life. I'm a person. But I just can't afford it, because that's my sort of workhorse in there, and I need it to be clear. So, don't let the book or the story that you're telling beat you. Tell yourself, you know what? Okay, you won that round. I don't know where to go there, but I'm going over here, and I'll keep writing. And if my muse wants to play silly buggers, as we say in Australia, over here and pretend that I don't know how I'm going to solve this plot problem, you can stay there, but I'm over here doing the work. And that's what I do. So I just keep writing no matter what. And then, for instance, in Troubles Keeper, there was a part, I realised also that I had the killer that I'd chosen was in the wrong spot. Another wrong spot. They always end up in the wrong physical places. That's where your problem is. And it turned out he was in two places at once in the timeline, and he couldn't be. So I looked at it and thought, what am I going to do here? And suddenly realised I had the wrong killer. I'd written this whole book, got to through most of the second draft, wrong killer. And then I suddenly thought, okay, if you're not the killer, who can be the killer? And I came up with the killer, that if you've all read, you know who the killer is. And it turned out that he was perfect. And I realised that he was there all along. I just picked the wrong killer, but he knew he was the killer. And the story knew that he was the killer. I just didn't know it. That's the fun of being what we call a pantser and somebody who doesn't plot. Sometimes you get the thrill of actually solving a problem, and that's half of the fun of writing, that, you know, you kind of outsmart your muse. Anyway, Trump is a jump and doer. What's that mean, Diane? I'm sending you Trump. Oh, there's two people arguing. Okay, you continue to discuss that amongst yourselves. Anyway, I think that's about it. I'm going to wind it up. I've been raving for too long, as we say. I thank you all for joining me. I will do one of these again, maybe after Christmas, because it's getting kind of busy, and I think everybody's busy. And we're doing the read-along at the moment, but Diane and I have been discussing and thought we'll pause it so people can catch up. And feel free to kind of jump in. If you're on ever looking for the read-along, all you have to do is search in the search bar at the top with hashtag whatever it is, like read-along, hashtag read-along, and it'll bring up all the read-alongs, and you can have a look at all the comments and ask questions about the stories. You're welcome, Tracy has said thank you. Thank you for joining me, everybody, and anybody who watches this afterwards. I hope you learned some stuff, but more, I hope you take a leaf out of a writer's wisdom. I don't know if I think I'm that wise, but I think you have to understand that most things in life are about failing, and if you take nothing out of this, don't be afraid to try something that you've dreamed of doing, and try it now, don't wait. And you might shock yourself. I mean, if I ever thought that 6 years after I wrote that first page, in January 2000 that I would be sitting here talking to people, having written several novels, in fact three unpublished, still sitting on my computer that I'll get to, had people from all around the world buying my books. I sold a book in Japan a couple of days ago. I was kind of thrilled about that. That was my first book in Japan. If you told me I would be doing this, I would have said no way. But here I am. So I wish everybody who has a muse that they want to, who they want to take them on a journey, whether you're an artist or want to start a business or want to write or do anything, do it. Don't be afraid, because at the end of the day, the worst thing that can happen is you make a fool of yourself, maybe, but that feeling won't last. But surviving, learning, growing, challenging yourself and succeeding, that will change you. And that's a wonderful experience to have. And if you've got children, that's something that they will see in you as well, that you had the courage to do something. And that's more important than whether or not ultimately it's successful. And I also believe, hi Emma, you came late, I'm going. Ultimately, wherever you end up is where you're meant to be, I think. But take heart in that I failed my way through all these books, and I will continue to fail my way through all the future books. And you don't get to see the mistakes, although you see a few, but you don't see how badly I failed until you get the polished end product. And take heart in that. And one of these days I'll show you or put up some of the edits, and you'll see how bad they are to start with. But anyway, on that note, I will leave you, and I thank you so much for joining in. I thank you if you've bought one of my books, if you've read one of my books. It means the world to me. I write because I want to entertain, and I have characters that also want to go out into the world and tell their story, and it's wonderful that people want to read. And I'll be doing this until the day I die. So there's lots more books to come. And I guess we'll catch up in January, and maybe we can talk about other things besides how to write, or we can continue to talk about that, whatever you want to talk about. Okay, thank you. And I will say goodbye from Perth, Western Australia. And I hope you all have a great day or have a good sleep. And I'll see you again at the Mayhem Gang tomorrow. And yeah, thank you. Bye.